Now, tens of thousands of people, backed by Mayor Bill de Blasio himself, have marched through the streets of New York City recently, calling for police reform and other social justice measures. Meanwhile, religious gatherings continue to be banned or severely limited, ostensibly to prevent the spread of coronavirus. Now, New York City and state leaders are being sued by 3 Orthodox Jews and 2 Catholic priests for discrimination and applying an unreasonable double standard by justifying First Amendment rights for some and denying them for others. Our senior U.S. correspondent Mike Wagenheim chatted with the lawyer who is pursuing the matter.
What we're saying is that different groups are being treated differently under the web of executive orders the governor has issued on the pretext of public health. As things now stand in New York, thousands and thousands of people are marching in the streets to protest the death of George Floyd, which is certainly a worthwhile First Amendment cause, while people are being limited to gatherings of 10 or fewer when it isn't a protest over George Floyd. And also there's been a protest over the cause of Black trans lives mattering, not just Black lives. And that involved thousands of people gathered at the Brooklyn Museum. So apparently these favored demonstrations are being granted an exemption from the 10-person limit on outdoor gatherings. That's an example of disparate treatment that impacts religion. Then we have the indoor limitations. The indoor limitation is 10 people in phase 1 regions of the city of New York and other areas and the lower end of the state. The 10-person limit severely impacts Jewish worship, as you know, because of the requirement of the minyan, the quorum of 10 adult males. Once that minyan is established, no one else can participate in synagogue worship. You can't have a congregation of 11 or 12 or 15. Women and children can't go. The child who's going to be circumcised theoretically can't be at the circumcision. A bride-to-be can't attend once the minyan is there because that would be the 11th person. It's actually a preposterous application of so-called public health concerns to Jewish worship. In upstate New York, we have plaintiffs who are Catholic priests. And that's a phase 2 region, actually just went into phase 3. And apparently in upstate New York, you can have a capacity limitation of 25% of a church. And that capacity is useless because the congregations in the upstate New York parishes where the priests are so large that you'd have to have multiple masses every Sunday, which is impossible under the church law. A priest can only really say 2 masses a day, maybe 3 masses a day under extraordinary circumstances. But under a 25% capacity limitation, they'd have to say 5 or 6 masses a day. And so we have huge problems of the exercise of religion. We have problems with the assembly, tight limitations on assembly that don't apply to other contexts. A telling example, in Brooklyn, you can go to a bagel store. There's a line around the block to get into the bagel store. The bagel store is full of people. Across the street's a synagogue. It's shut because you can't have more than 10 people inside the synagogue. Unlimited people for bagels, only 10 people for worship. How does that make any sense? It's a grotesque violation of religious liberty.
Does this lawsuit claim that this is intentional and malicious on the part of the mayor or the governor, or it's just an effect of possibly bad planning and just kind of making things up as you go along?
Excellent question. Now, we have evidence that religion was specifically targeted. There's one executive order in the series that says specifically that congregate worship in houses of worship is forbidden. So congregate worship as such was specifically targeted for prohibition. And that was between April 10th and May 20th. Then that was relaxed in favor of a general permission for indoor gatherings of 10 or fewer persons. But clearly there was a targeting of religion. Second part of my answer is it isn't necessary to show animus toward religion. All you need to show is that the policy is not neutral and generally applicable, but rather has various exceptions that burden religion. And if the policy isn't neutral, generally applicable, the case law says you need to have a compelling interest to justify differential treatment. And even if you have a compelling interest, the differential treatment has to be very narrowly tailored to serve the state interest. So what's the state interest here? We want to contain the spread of the virus. We want to flatten the curve. Whatever the rationale is, it seems to shift from one month to another. Well, then you have to narrowly tailor your restrictions to the purported interest of limiting the spread of the virus. And they haven't narrowly tailored the restrictions as to religion. They're allowing thousands to march outdoors, but they won't let 10 people gather for a religious purpose outdoors. So it's a hodgepodge of exceptions that's not being evenly applied. So we're seeking equal application.